Welcome to 3 and Out, the most exasperated college football show on television. I'm Jordan Burchett, and there are 3 things you simply can't discuss in mixed company: religion, politics, and college football. And if I'm doing my job right by the end of this show, you'll be upset about all 3. But first, let's just get to what every other college football show is talking about so we can move on to what's really important. Down goes Boise!
No good!
The Broncos' upset loss to Nevada should concern you about as much as Mauritania's upset of Swaziland in the most recent World Economic Rankings. Boise State was never a real threat to the national championship, and later in the show we're going to tell you why. Still, the loss was the kind of setback to a cause not seen since Abu Ghraib. But that Bronco's been beaten to death plenty already. If you've been out of town during the last week of college football, or say you're Bob Greasy, here's what you may have missed. On Monday, Nevada Senator Harry Reid spent 6 excruciating minutes of Senate floor time talking about the historic Boise State-Nevada upset that the rest of us already forgot about. It was the kind of toothless, hermaphroditic speech we've come to expect from Reid. But you know, Mitch McConnell's really asking for it as long as he insists on showing up at the Capitol every day looking like the Maryland Terrapin. Also on Monday, the sound operator at Alabama's Bryant-Denny Stadium, who taunted Auburn's Cam Newton by playing Steve Miller's Take the Money and Run and Dusty Springfield's Son of a Preacher Man before their showdown on Friday, was fired by the university for evidently having shitty taste in music. I don't know if he should have been fired for provoking Cam Newton, but he definitely should have been fired for having Steve Miller and Dusty Springfield on his iPod. Last week, the Western Athletic Conference tried to plug the Boise State-sized hole in its hull by calling the University of North Texas to gauge its interest in joining. Well, the WAC met with the same response it got the last 2 times it pursued the school. North Texas stared at its shoes, muttering something about having a boyfriend already. The WAC getting rejected for the Sun Belt Conference is like a wealthy athlete making a play for Khloe Kardashian. Wait, we did? Never mind. Let's just move on to the lowlights. In the most irrelevant action this week, Northern Illinois made the 5.5-hour trip to 2-9 Eastern Michigan, which is in Michigan, I think. Anyway, Northern Illinois did some stuff. Here you can see them running. Snap. Yeah, The crowd goes to the restrooms. I don't really know. Oh no, this you have to see because, yeah, and he could, now he doesn't really do anything there either. Christ, this game was awful. Eastern Michigan racked up 11 yards passing. 11 yards passing. And despite holding an almost 2-1 edge in time of possession, the Eastern Michigan, whatever they are, lose 71-3. Coming up, we're going to talk about the best college football player you've never heard of. Just kidding, it's Cam Newton. There aren't a lot of casual fans of college football. You're either diehard or you're Al-Qaeda. Take my idiot director, for instance. He hates college football, thinks it's confusing and arbitrary, and by now has to really be questioning his investment in a show about it. But he loves him some NFL. Yeah. I imagine it's because he enjoys watching billionaires add to their growing piles of cash and discarded dog carcasses. To illustrate the difference between the two, let's pit Vince Young the Longhorn versus Vince Young the Titan. Young the Longhorn was an effortless superhero who won Texas its first title in 35 years after cheating death as a child. When a car accident impaled him with his bicycle. Don't laugh at that. Laugh at the next part. Young the Titan, however, is a moody, privileged pop star who hurled his shoulder pads into the stands after last week's loss to Washington because his coach didn't put him in the game. And this wasn't Mean Joe Green tossing a Coke and a smile. It was a baby throwing his rattle. And if an NCAA player threw a tantrum like that, it'd be as last as an NCAA football player. The only thing Cam Newton is ever going to throw into the stands after an Auburn game is himself. Now, a great man once said football is like life. It requires perseverance, self-denial, hard work, sacrifice, dedication, and a respect for authority. But that man didn't have to coach players like Brett Favre and Randy Moss, who by virtue of their salaries and superstar status have made their coaches their bitches. As a result, Brad Childress, who came within a field goal of the Super Bowl last season, is collecting unemployment today. Why? Because Lego My Ego Favre said so. In college football, player-coach differences have ended entire Heisman campaigns. In the NFL, a fossilized quarterback with a hair-trigger texting finger can play Simon Says with the fate of his boss. The great man I quoted, by the way, could never make it in today's NFL. But there's still a place for him on Broadway. Avenue Q doesn't belong in the Meadowlands, everybody. And Lombardi doesn't belong across the street from Mamma Mia. I know that football's an aggressive game, and boys will be boys. But NFL athletes are supposed to be men. And last Sunday's rhubarb between Cortland Finnegan and Andre Johnson looked like Linus prison-raping Charlie Brown. The NFL agreed, penalizing grown men the way parents who feel guilty for not spending enough time with their Generation Kanye kids do, with a gutless $25,000 fine that takes Johnson less than 3 minutes on the field to earn. Contrast that with the punch thrown by Oregon's LeGarrette Blount after the Ducks lost to Boise State last year. Boom! In one shot, first of all, awesome punch. The senior running back forfeited the rest of his collegiate career and an early round pick in the draft when coach Chip Kelly suspended him for the season. So while college football punishes boys like men, the NFL is letting SpongeBob run the steel mill.
Rogue Pollster.
Since August, we've been assured by many that Boise State could endure the kind of season-long gauntlet that Oregon and Auburn have in the Pac-10 and SEC. But ultimately, they couldn't escape the 62nd toughest schedule in college football. The case for all oppressed BCS busters took a blow, with TCU paying as much for the loss as Boise State. Now number 3 in the BCS rankings, the Horned Frogs have played an even weaker schedule, and by extension of Boise State's loss, have forfeited any claim to a spot in the national championship game should Auburn or Oregon lose this weekend. ESPN's Kirk Herbstreit said as much when he admitted on Sunday night's BCS Countdown that he's been lumping TCU in with Boise State on his ballot all season, and only now is really starting to scrutinize the Horned Frogs football team the way he should have all along.
What Rod is saying is exactly how I felt myself as I tried to put together my top 5, because I really think I associated all these weeks Boise State with TCU.
What? Did he really just say that? Play that again.
I really think I associated all these weeks Boise State with TCU.
He knows ESPN is national, right? I mean, if one of college football's most respected opinion makers can be so flip about his top 5, how many other voters are guilty of the same thing? Well, since the American Football Coaches Association ruled to make its ballot secret starting with this season, we can't hold anyone voting in the coaches poll accountable. But for all the movement we saw in the rankings during 3 turbulent months this season, Boise State moved a net total of 1 spot from its preseason rank in the poll before its loss to Nevada. That's as improbable as walking down Mohammed Luther King Boulevard in South Central Baghdad at 3 a.m. and not getting shot. To give you some perspective, Oregon moved up 10 spots from its preseason ranking. Auburn moved up 21. And while schools like Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Florida, and Texas dropped in front of them, the Broncos got passed over like the drummer from Def Leppard for a pickup game of dodgeball. This is cowardly voting. Either shit or get off Lady Gaga's doorstep. If you thought Boise State was the 3rd best team in college football, it stands to reason that they should go up when someone above them comes down. Otherwise, your rankings are meaningless. But the voter fraud doesn't end there. There was another shakeup in the BCS rankings, this one at the very top. Auburn won half a football game against Alabama on Friday and convinced 2 anonymous coaches to change their number 1 votes from Oregon to Auburn, pushing the Tigers 2 10,000ths of a point ahead of the Ducks in the BCS standings. It's the first time in the history of the BCS that number 1 dropped in the last month of the season without losing a game. Anyone remember just 5 years ago when SEC coaches and officials threatened to filibuster the BCS because it wouldn't give the conference a ring? Now it's got the entire bowl championship series wrapped around its finger. All right, who wants to see my mail sack? JG asks, how does the BCS avoid antitrust litigation? Here we have a self-appointed group, the Elite Six Conferences, determining who's entitled to the windfall of major bowl payouts. The BCS has a legal and literal monopoly on national championship games and is consciously preventing its fellow competitors from getting a shot at it. Okay, for starters, let me just get this out of my system. Nerd! Thanks. As for your question, the NCAA, its constituent universities, and the conferences are all not-for-profit entities, which can never be monopolies. Further, a monopoly is an entity that has a stranglehold on a particular market, making it impossible to use anything but their crummy product. Unlike Beano Cook's monopoly on fat and stupid, there are alternatives to the BCS bowls, including the Beef O'Brady's Bowl, the San Diego County Credit Union Poinsettia Bowl, not kidding, or any one of a dozen Suckit.com bowls. And finally, all of the conferences and universities voluntarily participate in this system. If Conference USA, the WAC, the Mountain West, and the MAC want to secede from the Bowl Championship Series and declare their own national champion, they can. Hell, they can hold their own damn playoff if they want to. That's because the national championship is mythical. There are 2 centrillion major selectors, the AP, the coaches, the football writers, and a legion of basement dwellers with computer science degrees. And as a result, you get occasionally more than one national champ. We just commonly accept the BCS champion as the official number 1. It's called the free market, Jay. Love it or leave it for France. Haywood J asks, dude, what the fuck is up with Notre Dame on my TV? They blow, but they still seem to be the only game on. Does anyone really care about these losers, or is it a white boy conspiracy? Wait a minute. Has Notre Dame been losing on your TV? Because the Irish are undefeated on everybody else's, right? Dude, consider having your set repaired. It sounds like you may have a defective dick fur. Dig Doug Diego asks, G-stars in G-strings, straight up intimidation. Who am I talking about? You. Yo, how all these other schools keep getting top coaches and Miami gets stuck with these bird-ass Urkels. We invented this shit. What do we have to do to restore to you to its rightful place atop college football, baby? I'm glad you asked, Miami stereotype. To answer your question, we've invited South Florida native and Mississippi State defensive coordinator Manny Diaz via Skype. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Manny.
My pleasure. Great to see you.
First off, now don't you wish you'd just given Cam his $200,000?
You know, when that was going down, I was at Middle Tennessee last year, and the only thing we had to offer was a toaster and a year's supply of turtle wax. So we were out of the running on that pretty early on. Now that's a touchy topic. I don't know anything about it, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Now, of course, you're going to stay at Mississippi State the rest of your life because there may be Bulldogs fans tuning in through their aluminum foil hats. But why do you think the Miami job is so hard to fill?
You know, Miami's a really unique place. You know, when you go back and look historically at what college football programs have won national championships, there's really not a whole bunch of people that have shared the big prize. Miami's won it 5 times since 1983. Which makes it, in theory, a top job. However, a lot of the support and things that surround a lot of the other quote-unquote national championship programs don't follow through at Miami. So, in a way, it's a program of high highs and low lows. And so it may not attract necessarily the A-list type guys, but it's still a place where you can go and win for sure.
Well, you grew up in Miami during the Hurricanes' heyday. Were you a fan of the U?
It was hard not to be. Every kid growing up in Miami back in the 80s was a big fan of the U.
Okay, so during Randy Shannon's tenure there, schools like Michigan, Alabama, Nebraska, Florida State, Arkansas, and Notre Dame filled openings with the top names of the time. Meanwhile, the Hurricanes are rummaging around the trash for a discarded Twix bar. So how does Miami turn this thing around?
Well, usually when you have a hard question, sometimes the simplest answer is the most true. And Miami is a small school. It's a small private school, but has a limited alumni base and doesn't have financially the resources that some of the other schools that you mentioned have. And it's, hey, it still comes down to market economics, and it doesn't mean that you have to pay a lot to get a great coach, but some of those schools that you mentioned had the resources that they felt like they could pay to go get who they wanted to. And that's, people, different schools and programs are in different situations. That puts them in a different market for who they need to replace their coach.
So, pony up, Miami boosters.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's some people that would like that. Absolutely.
Well, all right, Manny. Thank you for your time and your expertise, and good luck this bowl season.
I appreciate that. We've had a good year, and we're looking forward to finishing on the right note. Thank you very much.
When we come back, my recipe for turning old University of Iowa sweatshirts into pot stickers. Welcome to my world. Booyah! You're hearing a lot about conference realignment lately in college football, and you're probably wondering how it affects your portfolio. Well, I'm here to educate you. This week, TCU announced that it's bolting for the Big East, a move that surprised many. But if you've been watching our show, we predicted this weeks ago. If you bought into TCU then, you're a rich man now. Dump it! That's because top 25 teams are more overvalued right now than Facebook, and athletic departments are selling at record highs like crummy pop-up housing in 2006. After Texas renegotiated its deal with the Big 12 to keep the conference solvent last spring, I advised you to liquidate your shares of Longhorn stock. UT sold when it was at its Britney Spears hottest. Now it's a flabby 5-7 dump truck, and Texas isn't any better. Meanwhile, those who shorted the Horns, namely the school's athletic department, have $25 million a year to show for it. But there's always a bear market somewhere. Take your TCU earnings and place them squarely on the Big East, which will be up for BCS reevaluation after the 2013 season. Because get this, the Big East will be able to use data from TCU's seasons with the Mountain West Conference toward remaining an automatic qualifier for the Bowl Championship Series. Once it does, dump it! The Big East is little more than a slapdash Katamari ball of athletic debris with 17 teams in basketball and 9 in football, which still needs a 10th. And given the league's complete disregard for geography, there's no reason why Southwest Botswana A&M shouldn't feel emboldened to at least submit an application for membership. In fact, you might want to look in on buying in on the fighting subsistence farmers now. And as long as no one running a conference ever watches this show, we can all be rich forever! The advent of the internet promised us a whole new universe of discovery and discourse, until the 15 minutes it took for fans of college football to start using it. Anyone catch this highlight during the UCLA-Arizona State game? All right, no one did. It's up, and oh, incomplete baby! Play that again.
Mom, Dad, come here, you gotta see this.
Oh, come on, he was fine. He didn't even cry. The kid's tougher than the Sun Devils' pass defense. Florida's Dee Finley has a message for fans critical of the Gators football program. Shout out to fans that be on our dick when we winning, then sell out when we lose. Please transfer, then kill yourself, then die slow if have time. Before I go any further, I'd like to add a +1 to Finley's tweet. Followers of the Florida linebacker on Twitter were quick to defend him. @Mullah Omar writes, "You're crazy, man. Fatwa forever, D-Train. See you at the next meeting. Don't tell CIA." Scott Peterson writes, "First!" And @Kim Jong-il writes, ROR. Let it breathe. And finally, this is what happens when one Boise State fan bets his comic book collection on the Nevada game.
Oh my gosh, crap. I do not want them to win. Oh my gosh, crap. Here. Shit! Shit! No! No! Fuck!
Never bet against the house, Poindexter. Looks like Incredible Hulk issue number 181 will be hanging in Caesar's Palace. Shh, dude, Mom's sleeping in the next room. You know what? Screw it. I'm going for it on 4th down. Thanks for watching, everybody. And remember, you're never too old to tailgate. Unless you're this rusty old crone. Goodbye, y'all.